Ukrainian armed forces missile and artillery troops have detected and targeted the command post and ammunition depot of the Russian invader army's Rubicon drone unit in eastern Donetsk region. As seen in the footage taken from the drone and released by the Ukrainian General Staff, the command post and ammunition depot were destroyed in a series of missile and artillery strikes, along with the invaders and military equipment present at the site.
Recently, the Ukrainian Armed Forces Unmanned Systems units attacked the Russian Druzhba oil pipeline and hit the Nikolskoye oil pumping station in Russia's Tambov region. In response, Hungary, which together with Slovakia continues to receive oil from the Russian Federation via this route, began to issue threats. Hungarian officials even hinted at the possibility of a blackout for Ukraine. Russia responded as usual with massive attacks on energy infrastructure in the Odessa and Poltava regions. Now, according to reports from the Hungarian and Slovak sides, Russia has allegedly resumed oil transit. In an interview with Glavred, the president of the Center for Globalistics Strategy 21, an expert on international energy relations and security, Mikhailo Gonchar, says that Russia will want to resume transit, and FICO remain outraged. There is no complete picture yet of whether oil pumping towards Ust-Luga has stopped. The issue is not only that the effect of stopping the Druzhba pipeline was caused by the damage to the Nikolskoye oil pumping station. This was the result of 2 strikes. In addition to this strike, there was also the previous one to the oil pumping station in Unecha. That is, it gave a synergistic effect. But it is important that from Unecha, there is a branch towards the Baltic to the port of Ust-Luga. Hypothetically, pumping may continue because a certain amount of oil may remain in the tank farm, which will go further and be loaded onto tankers. That is, we will see over time whether shipments have stopped, he added. According to him, in fact, about 14 million tons of oil per year go through it to 2 Central European countries, Hungary and Slovakia. Last year, if I'm not mistaken, it was about 12.5 million tons. If you compare this with the total volume of Russian oil exports, more than 240 million tons, then this is not much. Even if you imagine that this direction stops completely, it will not be a disaster for Russia, but it will still be noticeable, especially for Hungary. Orban relies heavily on this oil refining because it allows him to receive cheaper Russian oil via the cheapest route and sell oil products on the Western European market at a higher price. That is, to live on the same 2% as in the famous joke. This is an important moment for the Hungarian economy, which is why there is such a fuss, both from Orban and from Szijjártó. Another point, oil supplies to Union Belarus go through Druzhba, and the volumes there are larger, more than 20 million tons per year. In any case, this is very sensitive for Russia, but for it to become truly critical, their main export terminals would have to be smashed to smithereens in Primorsk, Ust-Luga and Novorossiysk, he said. Russia is facing a massive fuel crisis. Petrol and diesel are literally disappearing from filling stations. Russian media reports on queues at filling stations, panicked drivers, and obscene comments on social networks. The situation is especially dire in Primorsky and Khabarovsk Krais. Kilometer-long traffic jams form at filling stations, drivers carry canisters with them, and even tourists get stuck on the federal highways. The situation is getting worse everywhere, from occupied Crimea and Ordlo to Vladivostok. The head of the Russian occupation administration in Crimea, Aksyonov, has already stated that this will last at least a month. People are in shock. Where is the petrol? Local residents write. According to them, the fuel at alternative gas stations has run out, and at large ones, they are saving it for emergencies. The situation is aggravated by the monopoly and disruption of supplies. Against the backdrop of massive Ukrainian drone strikes on Russian refineries, some of the plants have been shut down or partially destroyed. Even in occupied Crimea, they have admitted that they are not coping. The deficit is caused by a reduction in production and failures in logistics, since gasoline is delivered there mainly by road. In Zabaikalsky Krai, fuel sales by coupons have already been introduced. Meanwhile, a new record has been set on the exchange. The cost of AI-95 has broken the market of 81,337 rubles per ton. A sharp shortage of gasoline and rising prices are hitting the entire economy. Logistics are becoming more expensive, freight volumes are falling, and inflation is growing. Russia is facing a fuel crisis that could result in regions coming to a complete standstill. Earlier, media reported that gasoline prices in Russia are breaking historical records. The market is shaking after UAV attacks. According to the St. Petersburg Commodity and Raw Materials Exchange, on Monday, a ton of AI-92 gasoline cost 71.5 thousand rubles and AI-95 80.43 thousand. Over the past day, the cost has grown by 1.33% and 2.2% respectively, and since the beginning of the year, the growth has amounted to 38% and 49%. To try to contain the rise in prices, the Russian government announced a complete ban on gasoline exports until the end of August, later extending it until the end of September. However, experts estimate that export volumes are too small to affect the market. Russia is again at risk of facing a fuel shortage. Since the beginning of August, 3 refineries have been shut down in the country. Rosneft's Novokubishevsk and Saratov refineries, as well as Lukoil's Volgograd refinery, the largest in southern Russia and one of the country's top 10. The combined capacity of these enterprises is 29.8 million tons per year, which is about 11% of the total refining volume. Last year, according to Reuters calculations, Russia processed 267 million tons of oil. In addition, Rosneft's largest asset, the Ryazan oil refinery, which supplied Moscow and the region, among other places, lost half of its capacity. The Syzran, Slavyansk and Afipsky refineries also came under attack. Oil and gas market analyst Mikhail Krutikin explained that the rise in prices is explained not only by the shutdown of enterprises due to UAVs. We have very tricky prices for gasoline in the Russian Federation. 75% of the price is taxes. This is not the cost of oil, which is only about 7%, not refining and not transportation. These are taxes. They are raised twice a year, so prices will continue to rise. Apparently, the export ban has somewhat curbed the growth of prices, but not dramatically. The main factor in the growth is the greed of the Russian government, the expert said.